All right, so you all probably all know at this point, we have a wonderful seminary program. It's 5 years long. And at the end of the 5th year, those that choose to go the full path are ordained as full ministers. Mary, Berry, baptized ministers. And I have a group of 8 that is completing that journey, and they'll be ordained in 2013. So, as part of their experience, we offer the platform for them to do their first Sunday service. And today, we have Charmayne Scruggs that's going to be sharing with us. And I wish it was easier to introduce them, but it seems not to be getting easier. I have walked with them for many, many years at this point, and basically know their hearts and their deep devotion, and have seen such growth. You cannot take these studies lightly. It's something that just changes the core of who you are. And so I want to introduce Charmayne. She has a very beautiful, exploring, embracing spirit. She is unique to the planet and a great gift to the expression of God. So, Miss Charmayne Scruggs.
So how y'all doing this morning? Awesome. Wow. I mean, we have quite a few people here. This is exciting. Well, I'm sure that you've all noticed that I'm not Cindy up here, and I'm not Patrick. So this morning you're having a new experience. And us as humans, we tend to quickly recognize outer changes in our world. And that's because we depended on the outer for our survival for so long that when something changes in our outer world, we recognize that. But have you ever thought about how the outer world affects our inner beliefs? Well, that's what I'm here to talk to you about this morning. I myself have lived a life of change, and most of us experience change throughout our life. Well, I grew up in California, and about once a year my family would relocate. My father enjoyed changing jobs. So what that meant for me as a child was I had to change schools. I had to learn what each teacher expected of me with every move. And I learned how to make friends, and then I also had to say goodbye to old friends. Well, all those outer dynamic changes in my life had an effect that I didn't understand at the time. But one of the positive effects it had was that I did get to meet new people. I did get to make new friends. And I had new experiences. New experiences and constant change became the normal in my life. And all this change helped me to maneuver through my outer life. I learned how to interact with different groups of people. I learned what was expected and what was not. And this all helped me to maneuver through my life as a child. It taught me that as children, we all have the same issues. From school to school, you had different groups. And the only thing that changed were the names of the people. And once I came to that understanding of the outer world, I could maneuver through it easier. I now had an inner foundation that supported my outer world. So can you see how our outer world affects our inner beliefs? How it applies to each and every one of us. Each little experience and nuance that we have in our lives. Now, can you take that and imagine with me what the disciples must have experienced? Their outer world experiences helped them in their journey with Jesus from town to town. It's what they had to support them in the beginning. Now, the disciples were men of different backgrounds. You had fishermen, you had tax collectors, you even had a zealot. Now, those of you that don't know, a zealot would be what we would call today a radical. So, can you see how all of them possess different foundations, different skills that they brought? Well, each of them joined up with Jesus, and they took their new mission Their mission was to take out the Word of God and explain to the people how God moved through them, through their lives. This was a radical thing to do. And Simon, being a zealot, had the foundation for radical thinking. He was capable to think outside the box. But Jesus challenged Simon and took it to the next level. And then there was Matthew. Matthew was a publican, or what we would call a tax collector. And that meant that he was educated. He could write. He was a scribe. And most people at that time didn't possess these talents. But his foundation taught him how to log and collect and deal with people's outer manifestations. He learned to do this with an open heart. And now, going forward on his new mission, he was capable of pulling in that energy on a spiritual level. And then you had Peter and Simon. They were fishermen. They had learned the behavior and patterns of the fish, so that when they went out to fish, they could throw their nets, they could interpret where the fish would be so that they caught full nets of fish. And they would use these talents, these foundations that they had secured in their childhood, to help them go out and draw in the people and spark their curiosity so that they could give them the message of God, of Spirit within. These are just a few of the disciples, and just parts of their inner foundations, their inner beliefs that they possessed. And each one of them, as you can see, are different. But can you see how they would have supported Jesus' mission, his works here on earth? Another experience I had growing up was traveling across the country with my grandparents. They were originally from New York, and I think when my mom was about 4, they relocated. They loaded everything up in their truck and drove across the country to California to start a new life. So during that drive across the country, they got to see the beautiful mountains and the different rock formations, and they fell in love with this country. Well, my grandfather, he was a steel worker. He worked in a forging mill. And during the summer, it got extremely hot. So he would take a month off during the peak of summer, and we would travel to New York. We drove across country. I remember being a child and sitting at the table in the kitchen with them and discussing where we were going, looking at a map of the United States and being so excited, so full of wonder that, wow, we're going to this place, a place I'd never heard of before. Yellowstone, what is that? Are the stones really yellow there? You know? As a child, I didn't know, but I knew it was exciting because they were excited. Well, they always made sure that we went to a different state park or federal park, that we always had the opportunity to have new experiences in our outer life. And I really enjoyed it. They had a camper, they had a truck and camper, and that's how we would travel across country. And they liked to start early in the morning. Before the sun ever came up, it was still dark. And I remember being up in the bunk bed of the camper and looking out that big window across the front, you know, and I'd have the curtains pulled across, and my brother and sister were there. And I would just lay there. They would be sleeping, and I would lay there and look at that sun coming up in the morning, and that light would just fill me. And I didn't realize the changes that were taking place. I was filled with the warmth and the sunlight that the new day brought. I was also filled through spirit. My soul filled up with life, with the joy of life. I fell in love with new experiences and travel. It was a magical time. it created a love within me that has lasted to this day. And most every day, I still wake up before the sun. I wake up excited and ready for a new experience. And my husband can tell you sometime I'm a little much in the morning. But these are changes that took place within me. Changes due to my outer experiences that I never expected. I never realized were going on. And it was years later before I ever even started to look at this. It was after my grandmother had passed, and I was thinking about the different things we had done and the time we'd shared together. And then all these memories started flooding back. You know? Memories of my childhood. And I realized the seeds that had been planted in my heart. Spirit had really taken hold. Well, it was pretty awesome to realize that Spirit could move that way through children. You know, each one of us know that Spirit moves through us, and we experience that here in the church and out in the world. But I was awed by the realization that at that level of consciousness, Spirit still moved through me and enlightened me and set me on a new journey. You know, the disciples experienced changes like these. They came from a background of Judaism and honoring the laws. So when they met Jesus the Christ, their world would have changed. It would have changed dramatically. And they would have experienced things they had never experienced before. One of the first things they'd experienced was actually meeting the Christ. And when they did, they would have felt that overwhelming love that was radiating from him, that just permeated the entire area that he stood around. And at that moment, they would have recognized him as the Christ, as Jesus, the Messiah. You know, that had to rock their world. Think about it, standing before the Messiah, someone that your culture had been waiting for years. Well, I don't know if you guys realize this or not, but the culture, the Jewish culture, had expectations for the Messiah. They expected that the Messiah would come and overthrow the establishment, and then they would be placed in the ruling class. Well, the disciples were well aware of this expectation, and yet they still joined up with Jesus. That's interesting. Knowing that expectation, knowing this is the background they came up in. I believe each one of the disciples would have had an experience in their childhood with Spirit, and seeds would have been planted in their hearts, and it would have flourished at the right moment. And as they moved through their life, these seeds would have started to give them inner support, inner beliefs. And these beliefs supported their outer journey, and a journey that started long before they ever met the Christ. As they traveled with Jesus, they started to have outer experiences. And these outer experiences were all new to them, but they're ones we're familiar with. Like the one where they were in the boat and the big storm came up and the wind was blowing and the waves were crashing against the side of the boat. You know the one I'm talking about? And they all went into panic and fear, and they ran over, and Jesus was laying there sleeping, and they woke him up. You know, Jesus, we're going to die. Help! Save us. Well, you know what happened. Jesus stood up and he said, "Why are you so fearful? Oh, you have little faith." He questioned their faith at that moment. He questioned their beliefs. And then, he calmed the storm. You know, at that moment, I bet you could hear a pin drop in that boat. they were asking themselves, what do I really believe? Where are my beliefs at this moment? Then there was the time, another time in the boat. And I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about, where Jesus walks out on the water to greet them. Well, the disciples were now having an extreme outer experience. Jesus was demonstrating something that they had never seen before. And during that demonstration, Peter decided it was time to step out. Peter was the first to demonstrate outwardly the changes that had taken place within each and every one of the disciples. He literally stepped out of his old beliefs and into a new one. And I'd like to read that to you. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus came to them walking on water. And his disciples saw him walking on the water. And they were frightened. And they said, "Is it a false vision?" And they cried out because of their fear. But Jesus spoke to them at once, and he said, "Have courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." And Peter answered, saying, "My Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus said to him, "Come." So Peter went down from the boat, and he walked on the water. He came to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was strong, he was afraid and began to sink. And he raised his voice and he said, "My Lord, save me." Peter stepped out only because Jesus was out there demonstrating a greater possibility. He had seen so many other demonstrations of outer possibilities that he decided it was finally time for him to step out and take that chance. He decided to release all his old beliefs and go into a new one. And when he embraced that new belief, he walked on water. Now, he held that belief within as long as he could. And then he started to realize that the wind was really blowing and the waves were crashing around him. And at that moment, he started to sink. And when he did, he knew that Jesus owned the belief of the outer demonstration that was happening. So he called out to Jesus. Peter believed in what was happening, believed in the possibility, but he didn't own that belief yet. Now, I see accomplishment. I see expansion. When Peter started to sink, there was not failure. He took the chance. He took every bit of his courage to step out and move into that new belief. It was his way of opening up to what Spirit had to offer. It was his demonstration in the outer that he was willing to step into a new belief. You know, sure, Peter struggled with releasing his old beliefs, as we all do. How many of us hit a home run the first time out? I mean, new beliefs, it takes commitment, it takes desire. You have to be willing to believe in the unknown. And Peter was willing to do that, to make that demonstration. He believed in the possibilities of greater. The way we take in new beliefs is we have the idea of greater possibilities. And then we kind of take them out for a test drive. We try them out. We see how far we can push them, if they have a limit. And then we decide whether or not we want to commit to those beliefs. And that's exactly what Peter was doing. He was taking his new belief out for a test drive. The disciples also witnessed physical healings, healings of the blind, lepers, and they saw the dead brought back to life. They were being bombarded with outer experiences that were affecting their inner beliefs at this point. This is something their world had not prepared them for. They had been taught by their laws that God could only heal, and that God was outside of self. So I'm sure they were really having trouble relating to the events that were happening in their outer world. If Jesus had come and told them everything the moment that they met, they would have ran for the hills. Their inner beliefs had to evolve first. And Jesus knew this. He knew they had to go within and ask for guidance and ask to be lifted. But he also knew that their outer world had to be supported for their inner beliefs to grow. They had to see tangible transformations around them over and over again before they were able to lift into that inner belief, to embrace that new consciousness. And once they did that, they could claim that belief for their own. Their level of consciousness lifted as they experienced new possibilities. For instance, the possibility that they could do the same thing Jesus was, that they could perform healings. They were starting to understand who they truly were within with these possibilities. They had taken in what had happened in their outer world and applied those inner beliefs to their outer world. This belief came from the foundation of the elevated level of their consciousness. Their outer world had affected their inner beliefs, and now their inner beliefs were changing their outer world. And we all do the same thing. When we start to create, when we open up to possibilities of greater within ourselves, we take those situations and we apply what we can from the outer experiences we've taken in at different levels of consciousness. And we do this throughout our entire lives. You know, right now in our world, we're experiencing change. We're moving out of the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarian. And things are happening out there, dynamic things. And it's up to us to decide what type of change we want to experience. Here at Inner Quest, we go within, we connect to spirit, and then we lift in consciousness to create inner change. But our outer world also affects that change. And if you're not surrounding you with people, places, and things that will support that, how much change is taking place? And this is why you're all here this morning. We all come to church for change. We still look to the outer for greater understanding, for greater knowledge of our inner beliefs. And you know, when you come to church, you're sure to see or hear something new that's going to affect your inner beliefs. When I came to Inner Quest for the first time, I was looking for change. I was ready to find something new. And little did I know what I was going to run into or what was in store for me. You know, I was looking to make a few inner changes. I knew something wasn't quite right, but I didn't know exactly what. But with the support of Spirit and Inner Quest, I have experienced change that has been miraculous for me. Like the disciples, I experienced outer demonstrations, demonstrations of co-creation and manifestations. And now, I do have to say, unlike the disciples, I had the belief that there was this much possibility that somebody could manifest. And I did fully believe that Spirit was within, though. And those two things alone put me miles ahead of where the disciples started. And yet, the change that I experienced still rocked my world. It was unbelievable. Things were happening in my life that I didn't think were possible. It challenged my belief system that I had at the time. Now, you know, I said I believed that people could manifest. That meant someone other than me. There was no way that I would be able to ever manifest in my wildest dreams. But you know, that changed. I took on a new belief. And I can see how the disciples would have had the same experience. They would have questioned what was happening in their world and if it was real. Think about it. It's time we experience outer change. Outer change is when we use our inner consciousness to lift into a new space through co-creation, manifestation, and transformations. These types of changes take time to permeate within our belief system. We saturate our outer world, and then we drink in the change and the possibilities to the point that our inner beliefs shift. And at that moment is when we get out of the boat and walk on water. Each one of the disciples experienced a moment like this. A moment when their beliefs were strong enough to impact their outer world. This is the type of change that we're all looking for. Change within that allows us to impact our outer world. Now, I started attending Inner Quest in August of 2007. I went to the morning adult classes and went to service, and I was really excited. I got moved by Spirit. And then by mid-December, people were talking about a class being offered, and it was called Metaphysics. And I thought, wow, Metaphysics. Oh yeah, I'm in for that. Yep, I was in for that. Well, I joined the class, and I ended up going within and asking a question. A question that stirred some inner emotions and changes. And that was, are my outer actions reflecting what I believed? And that was a deep question. Are my outer actions reflecting what I say I believe? And being honest with myself, they weren't. The answer was no. My actions were not reflecting what I said I believed in the outer world. So it was time for change. I surrounded myself with the support I needed to make the changes I desired from within. I read books, I attended classes, I did meditations, and I talked with people who were going through the same thing, who were desiring an expansion of inner consciousness. And I experienced change within. We know Jesus went out and spoke to the masses, but we don't always think about him sending out the disciples. He sent them out to perform healings. Now think about that. Healings. What exactly does that mean? They went out to perform healings. Is it just on a physical level? Or did they do healings of emotion, spiritual? I have to believe that when the disciples were asked to come and perform a physical healing, that they also gave a spiritual message, a message that lifted up people's hearts, that opened them to greater beliefs, a new message of love that they had never heard before. This would have created a new foundation for the disciples. A foundation that would support them after the transition to Christ. Once Jesus was gone, they had to own their new beliefs. so that they could demonstrate outer healings for the people. Their actions impacted the world, and they affect us still to this day through stories that took place and events. And we're moved by the courage and commitment that these men had. They followed their path, a path that brought them together as one with the Christ, a path that opened their awareness and expanded their consciousness. Just imagine the possibilities that are available to us because of the inner foundations that the disciples were able to create in their outer world through the changes of their inner beliefs. It's time we support our inner beliefs. It's time we use our outer world. We take the step out of the boat and demonstrate those beliefs. Take a chance. Challenge yourselves. Get out in the world and have new outer experiences. You know, Jesus told us, what I do, you can do, and greater. But if you're not out in the world, challenging yourself, stepping out, you'll never know. Well, we know it's possible. It's just a matter of having the courage, the commitment to expand our radical thinking like Simon, to start working on our spiritual energy and manifesting for the greater good like Matthew. Then, sharing our new beliefs for love of life with our fellow brothers like Peter and Andrew. We're all brothers. We're all one. And this new reality starts with our inner change. So, would you like to go within and create some change? Take a breath and place your feet on the ground. And now see a column of light coming over your crown chakra. And see that light filling you up with love and peace as you're held within the Christ light. Father, Mother God, we ask that our higher selves be fully present. We ask for your guidance at this moment. We ask for your support with our inner change. We ask that the Christ stand with us on this journey. And now, lift up that column of light. Lift up higher and higher to your garden. And enter that garden of peace and beauty, the one that you're so familiar with. And now find a space, an open space. Here you will plant a seed from your heart, a seed of change. Now see that seed generating from your heart into your hands. And hold it as you send your love and light within. And now place that seed deep within this fertile soil, knowing that it will grow and flourish here. Understand that this seed is a seed of change, a seed that will bring to you outer demonstrations of greater possibilities. Open your heart to the possibilities that are coming your way. And now the Christ stands with you. And as you both stand there, send love and light to this seed. See it growing and flourishing in your garden. It will branch out to all aspects of your life. You are supported by this seed. Thank the Christ for the blessings. And now it's time to come back. Come back with that energy of new possibilities within the outer. New demonstrations. New beliefs within. Take a breath and feel your feet on the floor and open your eyes when you're ready. Thank you.